Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at MoFpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais, and my co-host Andrew Bobo is on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Hey, welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast. My wife needs to put her phone down.
I'm sorry, I'm texting Jordan. We're working on things.
Yes, she's working on something for a fellow podcaster and one of our other hosts for a Prepper Broadcasting Network to help give her the kick in the butt to get back behind the mic. But
she's got the kick.
She's got the kick. She's getting the kick from multiple adopted older brothers.
Yeah. Well, I'm just helping her out with something else. So.
Yeah. But Andrew's had a pocket tonight, so I had to Shanghai my wife. She doesn't mind too much, and
I'm just a substitute.
No, it's a different point of view. One that I'm very happy to.
Thanks,
one
Kyle.
that I'm very happy to invite on whenever she'll indulge me.
I have said it time and time again. I like being on the show. I really do. So thanks for having me on, Phil.
Anyway.
Awkward.
All
right. What's up?
Well,
what's going on tonight?
Well, let's start with this because I need to get back in the habit of doing this. I don't spend enough time every show thanking our patrons and our listeners for the support, for helping to shoulder the financial burden of the show. Thank y'all. If you are just now listening for the first time, please consider subscribing. And if this totally turns you off, then just do me a favor, forget you ever saw it. Don't badmouth the show. Like, we like what we do here. But
I mean, you could just. What doesn't matter? What are we trying to teach Piper right now?
It hurt my feelings.
It hurt your feelings? Okay. Sorry.
Anyway, a couple of our patrons got together because I kind of threw this out to them and I said, hey guys, what would y'all like to hear me and my wife talk about? Because, she felt like she'd kind of beaten the whole prepping for ladies subject to absolute death. And we've talked about it several times. And, we've had a recurring request that we do marriage counseling for preppers, but I feel like we've bitten that one off a few times, and you kind of make it a one-word show because it's like, I just trust my husband. Like, what's so hard about that?
Oh yeah, I know. I can't ever dig deeper than that. I guess because I just don't know what else to say, except that I just trusted my husband. I mean, y'all have heard it. If you've heard the show, you've heard it.
Yeah. But then somebody brought up prepping with kids, which is something like we've talked about over the years, but we've never done like a dedicated episode. So there's like bits of our experience as parents sprinkled throughout, I don't know, 300 or 400 episodes, whatever we're up to right now. It's a lot. And I thought maybe that would merit, excuse me, that frog just wanted to come right back up.
Well, what merit?
I thought that would merit like a full episode to talk about kind of our experience, our philosophy as far as parenting, semi-specific to prepping, but kind of not too. Because like I got in some of this with the guys from Prepper Broadcast Network literally last night, kind of my philosophy on parenting and my thoughts on it and why so many people seem to be so horrible at it. Not that I think I'm the best parent on earth, but we sure try hard.
Yes, and we parent a lot different than a lot of people.
Yes.
Yes, I see it every day in the classroom.
And I just see it out on the streets from people whose children have very obviously never heard the words no and never had consequences and never had a job or a task or responsibility.
Or show respect for their elders or show respect for their friends or show, that is lacking. I can remember I can remember all of my school teachers all the way back through kindergarten, but Miss Acklin in second grade, she wouldn't have taken the disrespect and the laziness and the what's the right word I'm looking for? The handout that kids are, it's not handout, immediate satisfaction, the immediate gratification that kids have these days. And Miss Acklin would have read us the right act. So anyway, yes, I see it every day, how we parent different. I see it in our kid, and we're going through some things right now with our daughter, and um we're trying to navigate new waters that are a little more bumpier. That's not the right grammatical. A little more
Muddy,
bumpy. No, I said
bumpy,
more
bumpy road,
bumpier. More,
bumpy road, muddy water.
yeah, but not more bumpier.
No.
Yes. Anyway,
And you're a teacher.
I'm a teacher. I know how to speak. Um. Anyway, yeah. So let's dive in it. We are not. I always feel like we have to have some disclaimer. We're not the
Small print at the bottom of the screen here.
We're not like the number one parents on earth. We have one child, so we're kind of shooting in the dark there, and we're not always the happiest couple. We have our squabbles. So I feel like I feel like we need to put the disclaimer out that we are not the experts when it comes to kids and relationships. We do what works for us, and so I'm happy to share what works for us.
But back it up. I never fight with you. You're the one that fights with me.
What's the first question in today's episode?
Okay, we'll circle back around to parenting philosophy if I don't get hit in the head with a piece of desk equipment.
I am not touching a thing on this desk.
Thankfully,
the mic is exactly where it needs to be.
Most of the stuff on this desk is expensive and not easy to replace, so I appreciate that. But, the first question that somebody threw at me was like, how do you bring kids into prepping? Like, what's the appropriate age? What's the method? How do you do it? And I mean, we've told a lot of these stories like over the years, but like, I don't know what age. Well, I kind of feel like I tried to bring Piper into prepping, honestly, even before you had totally bought into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were, well, okay, so kids are easier to brainwash.
I like the word indoctrinate without the, the malicious overtone.
We're not indoctrinating her. Oh, thanks, Kyle. And Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. No, I think the younger you introduce this lifestyle to your family and your children, the better, because they're going to grow up in that. And so that's what's going to be the norm for them. And so when they go over to their friend's house and they don't have 5 buckets of food sitting in the garage, not that they'd ever go into the garage and see that, hopefully.
We'll get to operational security later. Please continue.
But what I'm saying is, gosh, you can't throw me off like that. My brain doesn't work. And 3rd and 4th grade sucked the life out of me today. And you want me to do a podcast. They're going to notice that their lifestyle is different from others. And, that's where you start to build confidence, and you have to tell them why you do the things you do. And, I mean, I remember going over to cousins and friends' houses, and pretty much everything was the same. Like, everybody did the same thing. Dad worked, mom maybe stayed home, mom maybe had a job, part-time job or whatever. The houses all looked the same. Everything was just kind of the same. Everybody ate dinner around the dinner table. And, I mean, at that time in the 90s, not everybody had a TV. And if you did, you weren't watching it. You were outside playing. So things have changed, but I think it's best to start them young as you can, and just explain what your lifestyle is. And maybe they won't have questions until they go to a friend's house or even a relative's house and see that, that that our family does things different than that family does. And they may not even notice it. It might just be so everyday to them that they just don't notice it.
And on top of just the lifestyle, like, one thing I always try to impress upon Piper, because you brought up telling them the why, I always tried to kind of help slowly spoon feed her the kind of the philosophical aspect of prepping. Like, when she was really, really little, a lot of our conversations weren't centered around like bug out bags and food and all this stuff.
Right.
It was really centered around just teaching her to be aware of her surroundings. Look both ways before you cross the street. The most basic parenting
Stop
advice.
when I say stop. That was our biggest fight. I'm sorry. I know I
Go ahead. Let it rip.
stop when I say stop, because Piper we live on a cul-de-sac, and so Piper had this habit of just bolting out the door. Like most kids, you go outside and it's like, all right, it's time to go play. So she bolts out the door. Well, she runs and she doesn't stop, and so she runs straight into the street. Well, luckily we live on a cul-de-sac, but if we hadn't, it could be very dangerous. Same thing when we're in a grocery store, wherever we are.
Parking lots, especially when you have a child that's like 2.5, 3 feet tall. You can lose them between two cars and they could bolt out into a lane of traffic, and nobody sees them until it's too late.
Yeah. So that was one of our biggest, but I remember that being one of our biggest, not fights, but trying to teach
struggles.
Her, stop when I say stop. Stop your feet where they are. Don't move your feet until the car stops. Don't move your feet until this happens.
Don't take the seatbelt off till the car stops when she got a little bit
right.
older.
So yeah, I'm sorry. So I interrupted you, but that was jumped into my mind.
No, it's okay. But like a lot of things I was trying to teach her were like, I call it self-preservation, but it's like just basic safety. Look both ways before you cross the street. Stay close to me and mom. We had conversations about mostly it was centered around me and her, because at that time of our lives, it was a lot more me and her because our work schedules didn't line up the best. So there were a lot of days you were working and it was just me and Piper.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our conversations centered around, hey, you need to hold my hand. Like, don't ever let go of my hand when we're in the grocery store.
Yeah.
We don't get separated. If we get separated or you lose sight of me, you immediately yell dad, because there's only so many dads in a grocery store, and a little child yelling dad is going to get every one of their attention at the same time because we're just programmed for that.
Well, and I, talking about getting lost or whatever, when I worked for Audubon, we had field trips that would come in all the time. And so when we addressed the groups, and even when I worked at the museum, when we addressed the groups, we always pointed out the colors of our shirts, and we always pointed out the logos, and that we would be wearing, a name badge, and it would look like this. And you find someone that is dressed like this, and they are going to help you. And we did that with Piper. Find someone that looks like this. You see the picture on the back of his shirt. You want to find that picture, and they will help you. So luckily, though, she held hands, or the card, or she was in the card, or whatever. So,
but the other thing I did with her, two things. First of all, when she was still in car seat age, I started teaching her that when I'm buckling her into the car, I started teaching her to watch behind me. Because at first, when she was a child, I didn't want to scare the hell out of her. But I started teaching her, I'm like, hey, if I'm buckling you into a car, I can't watch behind me. And if I take a step back and I bump into like a little old lady and knock her down, she'll get hurt. So just watch behind me and let me know if somebody walks up behind me. Now, in my head, what I was teaching her to do was to watch my back at the one time I'm perfectly vulnerable. Because I'm trying to get her buckled into a car seat. My head's in the car seat. I'm outside of the car. And I was extremely exposed and I wasn't able to watch my back. So I taught my 2-year-old to do it.
Yeah.
And it worked, because there was a time, exact scenario I laid out for her. A little old lady was walking, kind of cutting between, the rows. And she walked right behind me, right around the open door of the car. And Piper told me, there's somebody behind you. Now, I'm thankful that I checked my back before I reacted, because the first thing I did was go for my gun and clear my shirt, because I didn't know who was behind me. I just knew my daughter said, somebody's behind you. Once I saw the little lady, I figured I was okay. But it's still the idea that, like, I was teaching her the very basics of situational awareness so that she could help watch us. She can be a third set of eyes. She can watch herself. She's aware of her surroundings. And I've always been really big about pointing out to her, I'm like, you notice when you watch people, most people, they can't see anything further than about this away from their eyeballs.
I was about to say
their
that
faces
too.
Are in their phone. They're not paying attention to what they're doing. They're not paying attention to their surroundings. And I've always tried to teach Piper, I'm like, if you keep your eyes open and you watch, you have an enormous advantage over everyone around you, because you are aware of what's going on and you're watching everyone.
Well, there's 2 comments. The other thing I was going to say when you said that, yes, everyone is looking at their phones, but that is something that we actually we do at our house, and she's 10, and right now she's on her phone. She's messaging her friends from school, but Piper's not on her phone when she's out. And I say phone, it's not, she can't make phone calls. It's literally just like an iPod kind of thing. She's 10 and does not have a phone. Anyway, but phones are not allowed at the table. Phones are not, and especially in a restaurant.
My pet peeve.
Well, it is a pet peeve, but it's also situational awareness. First off, we're eating as a family, so phones are not allowed at the table. I mean, unless there's an emergency. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes we start talking about something, and we're trying to find the answers. So somebody will, take their phone out and Google it really quick so we can continue the conversation. But it also helps us to be aware. Phil always sits. I will always sit with my back to the door. Phil will always sit facing the door. We always go through where the exits are. And of course, we like to eat at the same restaurants all the time. So we don't have to do it every time we sit down. But she's part of that. So she knows no phones at the table. And she's watching people too. I'm a people watcher. I used to sit out on Canal Street in New Orleans and eat my lunch and watch people. And it was not the strangest thing a lot of times, but it was also interesting to see how people they just don't know what's going on around them. They don't know. So every time the bell rings and someone walks through the door at the restaurant, I'm going to shoot my head, turn my head over and look. And I know that you've already seen it. You've probably watched them get out their car and
yeah, because what I'm doing is like while I'm eating and like we've had this conversation before. I don't want to get too far off topic, but like
I know, yeah.
It's not from a point of paranoia where like I don't enjoy the meal and I don't enjoy the conversation, but I've just trained myself that whenever I'm facing that door, if there's a window, like our favorite Mexican food restaurant, there's a full length window on that wall. So I'm looking into the parking lot. I'm watching people approach the door, and it's not any extra effort for me. It's just right there. I just have to keep my eyes open and let my peripheral vision detect motion. And then I can very quickly say, look and see what's coming and then dismiss it or pay more attention to it. And I mean, Gillian and we've had those conversations. I haven't started having them with Piper so much, but Piper's she's aware enough of my mannerisms that when I get on guard, she doesn't know why. She just knows I need to stay close to Dad. But like Gillian and I've had those conversations about how sometimes somebody just gives me a weird vibe. Their mannerisms are off, their behavior's off. They look at a place. Something about that person kind of like kicks my spidey sense off, and I feel like I need to give them a little bit extra attention, give them a little bit more distance. It's things I couldn't explain to you if you asked me, but it's things it's things I'm slowly trying to get Piper into this thought process of, and it really is like teaching. A lot of it is kind of in the same vein as prepping. A lot of prepping is like really simple, like around here. Prepping is a lot of getting ready for hurricanes. It's stuff most of us learned when we were kids, or we should have. It's stuff that our parents did, our grandparents did, our great-grandparents did. People have been prepping for hurricanes down here since the Native Americans. If you want to talk about European settlers since, 17th century, it's nothing new and it's nothing exotic and weird. It's just the fact that so many of those lessons have been lost to time that people don't do it anymore. And a lot of the things Gillian and I, in my head, I call prepping, it's a lot of like normal safety advice for kids, but it's safety advice that parents somewhere along the way stopped teaching. They don't try to do that, or
because they don't do it. So if it's not something that they practice, they're surely not going to teach their children.
So they just run out in the street without looking?
Some
do.
Yeah.
Some do.
You've seen how women drive in this city?
She said it, not me. I'd be calling misogynist for letting that fly, but I'm just saying, like,
not good.
The behavior some of my fellow adults exhibit makes me question how they made it to adult age.
I'm sorry, my back hurts in this chair. He always puts me in this awful chair. It's a way to treat your guests. I hope I answered your question. Now the stuff's going to start flying at me. We had a comment up there though. Can we go back to the comments? I think it was Josh. I've got to get dinner and dad duties, but I'm really looking forward to the rest. Oh, bye, Josh.
So make them part of the plan, give them tasks. Now, we've talked about this before. Like, I gave Piper a task. She executed. She did exactly what I asked her to do. As she's gotten a little bit older, that task has kind of morphed into us trying to encourage her more and more to be aware of her surroundings, to tell us if we miss something, to be the third set of eyes in the room, to let us know if we've missed something. We know that for our home emergency plans, whether they are shelter in place or get out of the house, depending on the scenario, she has a job.
She does, and she knows it.
Oh yeah,
we've told this story. Yeah, with the fire.
She didn't stop till she got to the mailbox.
That sweet baby.
left my wife and my brother-in-law standing at the oven and just blazed by both of them. Like,
see ya.
Bye.
Hope you don't burn, Mom. I'm going to the mailbox where Daddy told me to go.
But that is exactly what I had told her to do. I told her, do not wait for anybody else. Your job is to get yourself out of the house. If somebody needs to make sure that Mom gets out of the house, I will make sure Mom gets out of the house, and I'm going to make sure you made it out of the house. But like, it's kind of the same scenario for a fire or for, like, God forbid, like an active shooter. It's this tiered system where, like, the order in which one of the three of us has to face danger or be shielded from danger is like Piper, then you, then me. Because Piper's the child. Our responsibility is to make sure that she's safe. And then you're my wife. My responsibility is to make sure you and her are safe. And then the only person that's responsible for me is me at the end of the day, because I hate to say it, but I mean, in a situation where somebody's got to face danger, I can't live with myself if my wife or daughter go in front of it and not me. So in those situations, a lot of our plans have always been around Piper tries to get herself out of danger, you try to get her and you out of danger, and I try to get the two of you out of danger. So that's why when we talked about fire alarm go off, her job is not to stop and collect pets or get you or get me. It's to get her butt to the mailbox, because I explained to her, if you get to the mailbox, you're safe.
Yeah.
Now that's only one person that I have to get out of this house, which is you. But if I told Piper, if you stay for any reason, I now have two people I have to get out. So if you can get yourself out, you've just helped me a ton by doing that one job.
Yeah. I think it's important. We've said this when we talked on these other shows, that you run the drills with your children. And sometimes these drills can be scary because the subject matter is scary, and you can make it child appropriate, but it's important for them to know how important it is that they do their part in these drills. And then, it's just like at school, we run fire drills and we do active shooter drills and we do whatever kind of drills, hurricane, bad weather drills, not hurricane, but tornado,
yeah.
And our kids practice it. And, we can't expect children to just wake up one morning and go, oh yeah, I know what to do if a fire were to break out in our house. They're not, so you run the drills and you practice it with them, and you make them part of it, part of the plan. But that's just one part of the lifestyle that we lead, is making sure she's part of those drills and she knows what to do, and she's part of all that. The other part is, well, maybe you want me to wait for that, like how to give them tasks and what kind of tasks to give them. And
go for it.
I remember it was a question a while back that I got about how to get their son involved, and we're talking like young son, young
4 or 5 if it's family I'm thinking of,
maybe 4 at the time, maybe even 3. Anyway, and then like how to get your sibling and their siblings involved and things like that. So how to get your children involved in your preps. And one of the things I told them was, make it a fun game. Joey, we're out of corn. What color is corn? I almost broke out into the corn song.
You almost did that. I felt it.
Did you feel it?
I felt you. You were like this close
It's
to going. It's
cone.
cone.
A big lump of knobs. Anyway, so make it a game. Corn is yellow. Usually there's corn on a picture of corn on the can, and make them count it. So we need 5 cans of corn. How many cans of corn do we have? How many cans of corn do we need when we go to the grocery store? Now when you get to the grocery store, Joey's got to go pick up the corn out of the aisle, find the canned goods, and then find the corn. And it gives them a sense of responsibility. It gives them something to do, and makes them feel like they're a part of the team, and they're not just the little kids that are taking up space, whatever. So make it fun.
The other thing I try to tell people, I try to advise people of, is meet them where they are. Because like you and I, when you came to prepper camp with me, I feel like you finally saw what I've been saying for all these years, was that within the discipline that is prepping, or the mindset, the lifestyle, there's all these different topics, and not everybody gravitates towards the same things. Like a lot of what you fell into and were very enthusiastic about were things I just don't have that much interest in. It's interesting, but it's not something I'm going to dedicate a lot of my time or study to. And because my wife's interested in it, there's really no reason for me to. My time is better spent focusing in my lane where I already have knowledge, where I'm very well versed and have a good network of people to query to get good stuff and put and spend our time and money wisely, and allowing you to kind of cover these other lanes that are definitely your interest that you're studying. And I tell people the same thing about children. When my daughter finally decided she was ready to start shooting, I was full blast, happy to take her out to the range anytime she wanted, burn as much 22 as she cared to, didn't care, money no object. I am meeting her where she is, because knowing how to use firearms is a skill. It's an important one, in my opinion. And when she got the wild hair up her behind and she decided, hey, I want to try to use a ferro rod, like we made a bird's nest right there on the front porch.
Yeah, we have pictures. I don't know if you can pull them up. Probably not. We weren't ready for that.
Wasn't prepared for that. But like we made a bird's nest on the front walkway and hand her a ferro rod and let her go to town until she got it lit. Now, did she chip up a lot of that ferro rod trying? Yeah, she did. But she learned how to do it. She persevered. She pushed through. And it was this huge high for her when she finally pulled it off.
Totally determined to create a fire in the front yard. Bobo. Tisk tisk.
But yeah, I mean, I say meet your kids where they are. Like whatever seems to interest them, feed into that. If their thing is like hiking, backpacking, camping, primitive survival, like building, if their thing is more traditional, like tradesman stuff, like they like woodworking, they like mechanics work, they like whatever. There's so many different things that can be utilized for prepping. I always say meet the children where they are. Like if your kid has no interest in firearms whatsoever, I would push for a minimum amount of knowledge, but I wouldn't hammer on them and have them go into classes and roll around in the dirt with you wearing a rucksack, because it's not their thing. Their time is better spent pursuing something that has an application in the prepping world that they are naturally inclined towards.
I think it's also important to remind adults that they're children. And so we are building the skills. We have to build the basics first before we can say, no, you have to have 5 years of supplies of this or 3 years supply of that. You have to at least build the skills, and I mean the basics for them. And I go back to making it fun. And this week in class, all of my classes are learning about magnets. And so as you get older in the groups, the 5th grade and 4th grade, they're learning about the magnetic poles of the earth and things like that. And so we're making it fun, and I'm teaching them how to use the compass, and they're having to make geometric shapes out in the field, and they have to figure out how they're, walking and things like that. I even thought about doing some sort of treasure hunt, like I'm a pirate, which I was for Halloween. But that's something that's fun. It's going to stick to them. When kids are having fun, they're going to remember. So if you make prepping fun, you make building those basic concepts fun for them, they're going to remember. And most likely, they're going to incorporate that into their adult life as they continue to grow.
The other thing I always tell people, kind of persuade to this, I don't do it with Piper super often, but I do find opportunities to sprinkle little prepper wisdom into just normal conversation. Like every now and then I'll quiz her when we go to a new restaurant, where are the exits? And I'll make her, while we're waiting on our drink order, whatever to get brought to us, I'll make her look around and tell me where the exits. And she always knows, if you don't see an exit, go into the kitchen, because
Mm-hmm.
it is part of fire code in the US. Almost every kitchen that I'm familiar with that can pass fire code for almost any parish or county in the country has to have an exit,
Yeah.
because grease fires are bad juju.
Yeah.
So I always try to explain to Piper like that, or I'll point out like just things that kind of tweak my interest and be like, hey, do you see that person over there? Notice how they're weaving back forth their lane. They might be drunk or whatever. But I'm always like trying to sprinkle little things into the everyday, so that it's not like a 20-minute long lecture about prepping stuff, but it's more of a, hey, notice that. Hey, pay attention to that. It's little. I know sometimes I get a little long-winded. I got the look. But I find that it works better, and I'm trying to mirror that by like these little 15, 20-second blurbs, or just point something out to her, just try to get her mind working in those veins. Because I mean, prepping is a mindset. It's not an activity. It's it's a lifestyle, yeah, but the mindset comes with that. And if you have a person who, they are kind of prepper minded, even if they lack skills, even if they lack gear, they are more inclined to figure a problem out than they are just sit there and take the L, because their mind works that way. Now, obviously, if they have mindset, they should have skills and gear. But if they have skills and gear without the mindset, they're just going to lay down and suck it when things get really hard. I mean, that was one thing that came out of Hurricane Ida for the three of us. I mean, that really emotionally beat the crap out of us. But I'll be dadgummed if we didn't stand up and do what we had to do. I mean, we took care of ourselves. We took care of each other. We took care of the house, took care of the animals, took care of half the neighbors. It was a moment in time where, like, as bad as we were hurting, as upset as we were about what was happening, we still were able to kind of dig deep and pull through it. But it's because we all have that survival mindset of, this is not bad enough to break us. We're going to get through this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, just our child being our child, she was out there flying a kite the next day after, and trees are all over the house. And we've said this 1,000 times because we continue to talk about Ida, but she was outside flying a kite because it was still windy. So she was okay.
She took it better than you and me.
Yeah, she did.
It's usually how kids work. They're more resilient than we give them credit for. So now, there's a story that goes with this from one of our patrons.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, and the reason he asked this question was because recently he had some family members, and I don't recall, and I didn't get into all the details, but I kind of get how we have family members who think that we're crazy tinfoil hat wearing nutcases because we're preppers,
Mm-hmm.
or that we're bad people because, we have guns, or we believe certain things they don't.
Mm-hmm.
He has family. He has family like that.
Yeah.
And that family was apparently trying to get information out of him or one of his kids about their preps, how many guns they have, how much ammo, and blah, blah, blah. Things that, in my opinion, they have no right or reason to know because they don't live in the home. But it became very obvious that, this family member was almost in a predatory way, like trying to figure out what was going on in the family house from the child, which disgusts me. But it kind of brings up something that you and I have talked with Piper about OPSEC is the military abridgment of operational security. It's keep your mouth shut. Don't tell people your business.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I've had to have conversations with our daughter about what we do and do not tell people that don't live in this house. And some of that's tiered even. Like, she knows that if it's family, tell them we're preppers. I don't care. If they're friends, maybe lean into that slowly. But when it comes to specifics about what we have, where it's stored, how it's stored, those are, I've told her, I'm like, those are
How much we have.
those
Yeah.
conversations are completely off limits
Yeah.
unless they live at this address or unless I have good reason for that to believe that person has a need to know. Like a couple of family members we have that are very, very close to us, right across town. I've told them what's in this house. I fully trust them. They are building up their own preps, so they have no reason to come over and give me trouble about mine. But it's one of those weird situations where, like, I wouldn't tell just anybody that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to have that conversation with Piper because she felt, we raised her to be very honest with people. And the question came up of, what if somebody asked me, do I lie? And I was like, yes. It's kind of a hard conversation to have with your kid after you raise them with the whole honesty is the best
You could
policy
just
thing.
say it's none of your business.
Well, you could have said that too, but none of your business is an admission,
I guess so.
that's and that's a conversation every parent's going to have to figure out between husband and wife and figure it out with their kids. But like, I've just been very flat with Piper about the fact that there are some of these subjects that are completely and totally off limits for everyone that except for the three of us, unless I tell you otherwise. And that's a lot because, preppers by far and large are not really enthusiastic about telling the whole world about what they have for lots of good reasons. But it's also just because I don't know who's listening. I don't know what they're going to hear, what they're going to take away, who they're going to tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing for a person to say, oh, well, that family, they prep for hurricanes. And then for somebody else to know to what degree and what and how much. So those are all conversations I feel like fall under operational security. It's a question of, like, in your head, you as a reasonable person would say, these are things I would or wouldn't tell people that don't live with me. And you have to have the same conversation with your kid, because everybody remembers that show, Kids Say the Darndest Things. Kids say the darndest things.
Well, they don't have a filter installed.
They have a main line between their mouth and their brain.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Andrew's dead on. OPSEC is important, especially if you have a bug out plan. If a big part of your preps isn't bug in like it is for us, but it's bug out, where you bug out, how you bug out, what vehicle you take, what you have packed up, your bags, your boxes, your whatever, that's all information that the average people just don't need to know, especially if you might keep somebody in your vehicle at all times. Like if you keep a get home bag or something in your vehicle, I mean, all somebody needs is a ball peen hammer and it's their bag now. So like you need to.
Yeah, it makes me think of that meme that's going around. And have you started prepping yet? No, I don't remember. I'll have to find it, but it basically is, well, I'm coming to live with you now. And then they all draw their guns to shoot him. And it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah. It's kind of the conversation we had after Ida, where I was like, my preps were really sized for 3 people. We were super, super fortunate that when your family came in from North Louisiana to help us out, they're kind of, I don't know, in the same mindset we are, but pretty close. And they came in basically ready to live in the front yard. Like they literally came in with their own fuel, their own food, their own everything.
They brought their tent, everything, just in case there was no place to put a tent.
I mean, but
you're gonna have to sleep in the hot house. But
they did exactly what I would have done in that position. If the positions had been reversed and they had said, hey, we had a tornado drop a tree on the house, we could use some help, and we were going up there, I'd have packed fuel, food. I'd have packed everything under the sun that I could fit in the truck, because I don't know what situation I'm going into. And I certainly don't want to be a burden on the supplies they have put back for them. I want to bring in my own stuff so that I'm a help, not a hindrance or an unintentional hindrance.
Right.
An extra mouth to feed in an emergency is not a great thing to deal with. Well,
and it's like Andrew says in the comments, hungry people are hard to turn away, and they are hard to turn away. We kind of, I wouldn't say we went through that. I don't think our neighbors were hungry, not like apocalypse hungry, but the neighbor down the street who didn't have water was definitely very grateful and in tears when I brought it. So yeah, it's hard to not give away your preps, but I don't want people to know what we have in this house.
No. And if you're going to depend on your child to kind of know,
I was reading that.
oh, sorry, hon. If you're going to depend on your child to know how to deal with those situations, like I said, if somebody asks and you just tell your kid, tell them it's none of your business, like, to me, that's just tacit admission that whatever they just asked you is probably true, or you just said no. So I told my daughter flat out, lie. And I may or may not be totally happy with having to tell her that in that limited circumstance, but I put it in the
I
same.
think it'd be hard for her to do that, just knowing her personality. But I think this is a good conversation for you and I to have, because I think we're gonna have to give her a different way to well, if it ever gets brought up, the topic gets brought up, she's going to have to handle it a different way, because she's not a liar. She's very black and white, and everything that comes out of her mouth is the truth. And don't ask her opinion if you don't want your feelings hurt, because she's going to tell you what her opinion is, and you might cry, because it happens. It happens. But I'm just thinking, to tell her to lie, it might not be good for her, and it might not be good for another family that's trying to teach their children what to say and what not to say in this situation. And so maybe it is to defer back to, well, you'll have to ask my mom that, or let me ask my dad. I don't know if I can tell you. I don't feel comfortable with this conversation, or I don't feel comfortable with that question. Empower your children to say no. No is a complete sentence. It's my favorite thing to say. No is a complete sentence. No, I'm not talking about that. No, whatever.
So notice the juxtaposition between the teacher and the crazy army vet that doesn't trust anybody. She says we need to teach conflict resolution, and I'm just like, just lie to them, screw them.
Well, and I'm only saying that because I know our child well enough to know that lying is hard for her, and that's a blessing. I consider that a blessing for us. I hope that it continues as she becomes a teenager in almost 3 years. But yeah, I know, teenager.
Did you have to steal my joy?
I know, almost 3 years.
Did you have to?
I hope that continues, but knowing our child, I think she will have a hard time saying that. I think she'd have an easier time saying, I'm not talking to you about that. And just, leave it at that. Hopefully, though, she's never in a situation that we've left her with someone that's going to do that and make her feel uncomfortable, because that'll be the last time they're with my child.
Yeah. That's also where our responsibility comes in, to try not to put her in situations where she's going to have to confront that.
Right.
But step one is just teach your kids, like, don't spill the beans.
Just don't spill the beans, and don't tell them where they're located.
So
you didn't get my joke.
Oh.
Where are the beans located? It was a dad joke.
Anyway.
He doesn't like my jokes.
I was segueing.
Sorry.
This is a very good friend of ours, the one that sent Piper the box full of 22. Mm-hmm. He brought this up. Context, he and his wife don't have kids.
Mm-hmm.
I know he has a lot of extended family. And he brought up planning for the future of these children. Like, simple things like having clothes and shoes and whatever put away, not, that are going to fit them, say, after the growth spurt they might have in the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
Or, our kid's growing like a weed at the age she is.
Yeah.
And that's important to have, like, some kind of clothing. It doesn't have to all be cute stuff, but something put back for the future. That way, if your kid suddenly outgrows all their clothes over the course of a summer, you have something to immediately put them into. Or supply chain issues we've been having with the cost of goods and clothing shooting up as high as it has been. Having a little bit of a backstock of, like, hand-me-down clothing can be a financial windfall these days.
Or learning how to sew.
Learning how to sew goes right back to teaching them a skill.
Mm-hmm.
I've told the story before of how I horribly underprepared for Piper picking up shooting her 22. Because there was a point at which I think I had about 2,000 rounds of 22 LR, and seeing as how I don't ever shoot my 22, I figured, if I ever get a hair, And all of a sudden, little Annie Oakley out there decided she wanted to start shooting her 22, and she burned through the best part of 200 rounds in an afternoon with a bolt action.
I helped her.
We need to
It's
get
a
her,
lot of fun.
we need to get her back out there.
True.
But
I have to say though, when this one was brought up, and the example that he gave with the clothing and all that stuff, for some reason, I don't know, it never dawned on me to plan in the future for clothes that she might need. I've always planned to have extra, you go on a 2-day vacation, you're going to pack 5 things of underwear because you never know. You never know, right? Well, I do
stuff
that with her
happens.
too. And I just never thought, well, in 3 months, if something happens, I can't get to a store to buy clothes for her. I don't have fabric at the house that I can just, I mean, we can wear the drapes and, do
They're a
it
cute
that way.
pattern.
Yeah. But this one had never dawned on me to have extra clothes of sizes that she'll grow into eventually. Luckily, thanks to Debbie, who's watching, she's always got a pair of shoes or 2 or 3 that are too big for her. And she's got clothes or whatever. And not so much anymore. I think, Piper's just now coming into fashion and makeup. So
I still haven't come in fashion or makeup.
but it's easy for Piper to just put on her reindeer onesie pajamas and wear that for a few days. So
Months.
and that's an
she will
adult
wear
size.
that.
So I just have to take out the hem, and she'll wear that till she graduates from college or something. So
She will wear that from now until at least January the 1st, probably later.
I woke her up this morning. I know this has nothing to do with prepping, but it is our life. I woke her up this morning, and she has a loft bed, so she's up high, and she's gone to bed with her reindeer onesie pajama thing on, and she wakes up and she's got the hood on, and then so the horns, the antlers flop down, and 5 more minutes, Mom. Anyway, that was my morning. Ugh, I don't want to wake up. Dear Santa. Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, I think planning for their future, there's a lot of avenues to go down there. I mean, yeah, we could talk about planning for their future by teaching them skills. We could talk about putting preps back for them that they're going to grow into eventually. I mean, that 22 that Piper is shooting now, we got that 22. She was probably about 4 or 5. We got it given
from the neighbors.
Yeah, we got it given to us from a neighbor who found it in one of their parents' closets, wanted rid of it, like didn't want it the parent didn't want it there with all the grandkids running around. And nobody shot it anymore. When they gave it to me, the bolt was almost like seized into the action because it'd been left sitting in a closet for God knows how many years. And it took a little bit of work with like ballast, some steel wool, a lot. Took a bit of cleaning up, and I got it running great. And I just put it back in the safe for Piper because I was like, sooner or later she's going to start shooting, or I'm going to teach her to shoot. And that 22 was sitting out there before we had a BB gun to start teaching her with. And it was one of those unintentional, like, yeah, she had a 22 sitting in the safe for when the day came, she was finally ready to go that way. And I'm now getting into the mind of like, what is that next rung up to continue to advance her as far as shooting? I've been thinking about the same thing for you, to be honest, because I know that you're hell on wheels with a deer rifle, but I do definitely want to start moving you more into like modern sporting rifles. And that's just something you don't have a ton of experience with. So I've been thinking about like build you your own rifle that is just yours. It's built exactly the way you want it, so you can get familiar with it, and it's not you using one of your husband's rifles.
I like that idea. Okay, let's do it.
Anyway, but I've also been thinking the same thing towards Piper. Like, do I take that money and put it aside, build her one? It's nothing she'd be shooting anytime soon. She's probably about 2 or 3 years away from being really not even like strong enough, because she's a pretty strong kid for her age, but really her wingspan, her arm length has just got to get a little bit longer to really be able to handle an adult-sized rifle, no issues. Like that's the limiting factor right now.
Mm-hmm.
And but I've been thinking in that vein of like, do I put aside that extra rifle? Do I put aside those extra mags? Do I put aside the extra ammo so that when we get there, I've already got things ready for her? That's one of the reasons I got the CZ Scorpion. I mean, I got it because I wanted it, but it's also a very small, compact 9mm soft shooting carbine or a firearm. It would be a phenomenal thing to teach her with to graduate her from 22 as an intermediate before we start teaching her real rifle cartridges. Like I wouldn't move her from a 22 straight into my 308 bolt action.
Mm-hmm.
That thing whacks the shoulder pretty good. But it's thinking in those lines. And let's get really nerdy about it. Finances. Who here has a college fund for their kid? Or who here has even thought about like their child's eventual finances, the ability to send them to trade school or putting money aside for that child, or even just trying to build their own nest egg to leave behind an inheritance for their child.
Right.
Like all of that is planning for your child's future. And if it sounds like there's a ton of parallels between this and just normal planning for your child's future, there is. It just so happens that in addition to, all the other things that most people think about when they think planning ahead for your child, we also think of things some other people don't think about because
Mm-hmm.
it could come in handy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. Yes. No, I think you're right. I think planning for the future would hopefully be what every responsible parent does. But when this person gave us, that idea of the clothes and things like that, it really made me think, well, what else haven't I done? Starting to think down that mindset. And there's a lot, I think, that I need to get ready for. And some of it's conversations. You plan for the future for your child, for the eventuals that they will go through, and maybe talking with your spouse or their other parent or whatever, and how you're going to have those conversations. And hopefully some of those things you've already discussed before you had children. But I mean, with the two of us 15 years ago when we got married, things have changed,
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. So those discussions are worth repeating again. And then what ways and how will you bring those things up to your child? I think it goes back to introduction to the mindset and things like that. So
All right. So that was everything the patrons left us with. I did say I wanted to circle back around to like just general, I would like to call this like general parenting philosophy.
okay.
Although I'm sure some people are going to see that there's some parallels here with like my general mindset. But like one of the things that I was really got a little preachy about, I was on the phone, I was on the chat the other night with the guys from Prepper Broadcasting Network. The guys.
I heard.
Yes, she heard me through two shut doors. I got a little animated at times. But one of the things I brought up was I'm like, I really feel like one of the things that's missing from parenting these days is just this idea of like the fact that parenting is the way I explained it was, and then I'm gonna be very man centric for a moment because that's my perspective. But like
I like men.
but as a husband and a father, those are titles that are not they're not positions of privilege. They're not. They're positions of responsibility. Like as a father,
I've always loved how you say that.
Yeah. As a father, my responsibility is to my daughter for her care, her well-being, her education. And I don't just mean sending her to school. I mean teaching her all the things she's never going to learn in school. Because I don't want school to teach her certain things. I want to teach her those certain things. My responsibility as a husband is to protect and look out for and love my wife. And those are things that come with immeasurable weight and responsibility, and they demand selflessness.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing and prepared and constantly able to put other people before yourself.
Yes.
And I say constantly able because I've said it before. I've said it 100 times. You don't learn much about a person when they're having a good day. You don't. People having a good day.
That's so true.
People having a good day when they're well fed, they're air conditioned, they got their iPhone, they got their Netflix, they got all that stuff.
They've had enough sleep. They're healthy.
Yeah. People in those people having a good day can put on a wonderful face. People having the worst day of their lives, you see who they really are in those moments. When you see them crack, when you see the face fall, Gillian has seen that out of me recently with some of the stress I've been under, where I've just had to let it out. I've had too much going on and too much emotions. I've had to let it out. I couldn't hold that stoic, everything's fine face. I couldn't hold it anymore.
Mm-mm.
But it's even in those moments when a person's at their lowest, when their child comes to them and says, "Hey, Dad," they can still push everything aside and say, "I have to take care of my child."
Yeah.
At their lowest moment, they're still prioritizing their wife and their child, or their husband and their child. And if you can't do that, a really harsh reality, I'd say you don't have any business being a parent, because that is the job. That is the gig, and there's no way around it. And it's one of the things that I've tried to like share with other people. And I feel like most of the people that you and I keep around me, they kind of understand that already. And most of the people that don't get it, they're never going to get it. It's just, it kind of, there's some mental block there where they just can't understand, like, I have to put my kid in front of me all the time. And I'm like, yes, that's what your job is.
Yeah. Well, and then to that, I think it's important to say that, because when I had Piper, I had horrible postpartum, and it lasted for 3 years. It was awful time in our lives. It was awful time for me. But the one thing that everybody said to me was, you can't take care of your child until you have taken care of yourself. So you do have to stop and take care of yourself. And I think that's what you did when you've been breaking down, and that stoic face goes away. That is part of your healing process. That is part of your stress relief. And so to tell a parent that they have to care for their child, like, yes, that is their job. That is their number one, is to make sure that their child is happy, healthy, and protected and all that stuff. But you have to take care of yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you didn't take care of yourself as the protector and the whatever of this family, and you had something happen or whatever, maybe you had a mental breakdown or whatever, now all of your responsibilities are shouldered onto mine, or put onto my shoulders, on top of everything else that I already carry for this family. So we carry different things. And I think that's what makes our family work. I think for the most part, we're a very traditional family, besides the fact that I work out of the house and, have my own career. But you carry those masculine traits that a man brings into a relationship, and I bring in that feminine aspect, and then we have our child as a part of that. And I'm going to get myself into trouble if I keep going. It works. It's supposed to work like that. And
it's worked pretty well for several thousand years already.
Well, and it works for us. Maybe different ways work for other people. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. You have to take care of yourself in order to take care of others. Because if you don't, then you're not there to take care of them.
No, that's fair point. I would answer that in two ways. First, by saying, in those moments where you had nothing left, I tried to be there as much as I could to take the load off of you so you could care for yourself. And still, when you did have that effort, that, when you cared enough for yourself to stabilize yourself, you did give the affection and the attention to Piper she needed.
And you.
Yeah. But I mean, we that was the give and take of, I had to take care of my daughter, I had to take care of my wife. Like, but the other thing I wanted to bring up was, I'm like, there's two things. First of all, one other thing that we've always been very particular about is Piper never comes between the two of us.
No.
Ever. And Piper has asked me what most I'm sure most kids have asked their parents. She asked me one time, she's like, "Do you love me more than mom?" And I'm like, "No." And it broke her little heart. Like
Mm-hmm.
she was very upset. And I tried to explain to her, I'm like, "You are my child, and I love you more than the breath in my lungs. But mom's my other half. I can't love anyone more than I love mom, because mom is the only person on this earth that made me whole. And I would never be who I am today if it wasn't for you. So I can't love anyone more than my wife. And we're not supposed to love anyone more than our
That's
spouse.
true. Your spouse comes
Any
before your children.
anything more than our spouse, not money, not attention, not our jobs, nothing. Nothing is supposed to come between, in between the two pillars of that married couple, in my
Mm-hmm.
humble opinion. But the other thing I'm very quick to point out is what I see happening very often with other parents is that it's very rarely the situation you talked about where I have to care for myself because I can't care for somebody else right now. It is very often, I want me time.
Yeah.
I want me stuff. I want me more than I
Mm-hmm.
want you to have you time and you attention and you stuff.
Yeah.
And it goes right back to the whole selflessness thing. Like, if you have enough money for a single whatever and you get one or your child gets one, I don't know how to explain it to you any better than you should be taking care of your child's wants before your own, in my opinion. I mean, that's, the last farm I bought, Gillian had to literally talk me into it. I'd wanted one for 3 years.
I think I even got Bobo involved. I
Yes,
was like, please tell your friend to buy the gun.
y'all all bullied me. But seriously, I'd wanted one for like 3 years, and for 3 years I didn't even bring it up because I knew what was going to happen if I did. And I talked myself out of it multiple times because I was like, I don't really need it, and it's
I don't want to spend the money.
it's X amount of money, and somebody's
Mhm.
birthday is around the corner, or something's about to happen that we're going to need the money, or it was always something.
Mhm.
And it was when I think I had like end of the year bonus money left over that lined up with my buddy's gun shop getting one in stock, and the stars aligned and Gillian bullied me into it. But like, that's my mindset. It's, if I spend this money on me and I don't have it to spend on Gillian and Piper, I'm gonna feel awful about that, because I feel like it's my responsibilities to give to the two of you before I give for myself.
As long as you have enough to get tacos, I'm good.
Okay, so as long as I can afford, a $60 bill at the taco place, I can go out and buy $1,000 gun. Heck yeah.
I mean, priorities, babe. Tacos. I've been wanting tacos all week.
You're getting tacos this week.
I know. No, I think it is important to take care of yourself. I was going to say something else, but I think that's probably good for another episode. It doesn't have anything to do with kids. It's relationships, and maybe we do need to do like a relationship kind of episode.
Prepper marriage counseling.
Sure. I don't know if it'd be prepper, but yeah. I don't think it'd be counseling either.
Just relationship talk.
Yeah, I think maybe so. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like my general philosophy on parenting, and it's very man centric because I'm a man, I'm the husband and the father, but I doubt any of it's really things that you wouldn't echo, and it's something I see missing from a lot of parents these days. I see a lot of parents who are way too focused on themselves, or they're way too focused on things other than their spouse and their child or their children, and I think that people tend to invest their time and their money and their effort where they prioritize it. In other words, like when I see a person with a really big house, I don't begrudge them for having a really big house. That's them.
Mm-hmm.
And big house, expensive cars, glitzy stuff, it means nothing to me. Like, I don't work my butt off so I can have a big house like my neighbor. I work my butt off to take care of my family. I want the two of us to spend time together. I want us to go on trips. I want us to go camping. I live for those moments when I get to spend time with my family. And it's a lot of the reason I changed career fields years ago. Probably took a pretty good pay cut to do it too, because it was more important to work a quote unquote like a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, be home with my wife and daughter, be able to spend time with y'all. It's the same reason you just changed careers too.
Yeah.
Because you were in one hand you had a career that you loved. Drove you crazy sometimes, but you loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weekends and holidays and late nights, and even when we were on vacation, you were working.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand was a job that I think you enjoy, but it was a lot of soul searching to say, if I take this, I have more time to spend with my daughter, but I lose these other things.
Yeah.
And I mean, for you, you had to do a lot of soul searching. For me, it was a real simple decision to make years ago.
For that
because
decision, it was more of a decision knowing if I worked at this school, then my child it would be easier for us to put her there. And she needed, more than me needing my weekends and nights and holidays back, she needed to go to this school.
And she also needed her mom.
And she needed her mom back. And so both of those things worked out for us. And as draining as it is, because hashtag teacher life, I'm telling you, it's something. I go to bed at 8:30 every night. I'm so tired. Not every night, but it was a decision that was hard because I was trying to bat around the question of continue my career. I'm building something great in this community, or stop all that, like hard break, and I need to be with my family, and I need to make sure my child, especially at this age and the prepubescent time that we're obviously starting to go through, she needs her mom, and she needs downtime, and she needed to be in this place.
Yeah.
So I stopped my career. I wouldn't say I stopped my career.
You changed it.
I changed it. It's I still get to do a lot of the same things that I like to do, but
yeah.
Anyway.
But I guess to kind of loop it all back
one more thing
to what we started, huh?
I was going to say one more thing.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say children are going to mimic what they see. And I see it as when we first started this episode, I see it every day. And I know that those children, in the way that they act in my classroom, is probably the way that they act at home, most likely. The things that they say and the things that come out of their mouth are the things that they are hearing at their home, or their parents are so disconnected that they're hearing it on YouTube and TikTok and everything else that they're allowed to watch. Now, I teach elementary and middle school, so nothing more than a 7th grader. And I'm shocked at what comes into my classroom every day. Every day, I'm shocked. I could write a book. And I've only been there since August. So I can see what these teachers that have full-time careers, 30, 40 years in doing this, and they could probably see the change in times and how children are different nowadays than they were when we were even in school. But children are going to mimic what they see at the house, what they see at home, and that goes for their behavior and their respect for others, but it also goes for the way you live. So your prepping lifestyle, they're going to mimic that. And they see their parents do something and they're going to think, well, that's how it must be done. I mean, we are our child's first teacher.
That's probably a better wrap up than what I had in mind, honestly.
Oh, I finished?
Pretty close.
Okay.
But I guess that's the ultimate way to prep with kids is it's the same advice. It's the same thing that a lot of preppers struggle with, is getting their families involved in prepping. And I'm always super encouraging of, please, for the love of God, get your family involved.
Yeah.
Because this is it's difficult enough to do the kinds of things we do by yourself. Gillian knows I couldn't even begin to add up the number of hours or the amount of money that we as a family have invested in preps and in learning skills and in loading ammo, just all the stuff we've done. Because I mean, we've been pretty heavily invested in this lifestyle for several years now, and I
And
would,
every year it gets deeper and deeper.
yeah, and I would even say like we were probably like kind of lightweight preppers even before that, just from living down here on the Gulf Coast. Like hurricane prepping is just kind of a no, Doug, you're supposed to do that. We just kind of turned it up to 11 over the years. But I guess that's kind of my thought process is like I did a lot of the work initially myself because Gillian hadn't bought in and Piper was frankly just a little young to really participate. And I can say that since Gillian has become more and more active, it's taken a lot of burden off of me because now I can still continue to focus in the thing I'm really good at. And you are taking this whole host of new ideas and skills and direction and integrating it into the family. I mean, just some of the herbalist medicine that you brought in, I'm convinced it cleared up my sinus infection that I came back from prepper camp with.
It did.
Because a week of antibiotics and steroids did freaking nothing for it. And like what, 3 days of goldenrod tea and a little bit of local honey, and I was cleared up. Done.
Mm-hmm.
Send your wives to prepper camp. They will come back with all kinds of cool stuff.
Well, I mean, that just goes to show that prepping isn't just loading up on ammo and food and everything else. It's finding an alternative lifestyle to and learning how to live. I mean, honestly, it's learning how to live how they did 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and further back.
It's learning how to survive.
Yeah,
at the
it's
end of the day.
survivalist.
And
You're a
anything
survivalist.
that enhances your survival is useful. And that is like the best thing I can tell you about prepping with kids. You're trying to teach your children skills that hopefully never will, but might one day give them a better shot at surviving a bad situation. And anything in that vein that you teach them, whether it's personal safety or how to guard information from it being used against them, or you teach them skills, or you teach them, or like, you put together a bug out bag for them, anything you do in that vein that you pass that knowledge to them and you get them to buy into it, anything like that is good. At that point, it's going to come down to what does your child show an interest in? Because I believe in swimming with the current, not against it when you can. And it's also going to come down to trying to position that child in the best possible way so that down the road, if there's ever an emergency, they come out on top, which is the ultimate hope for everybody that's into prepping. I mean, I don't do this for fun. I do this because I want to be able to take care of my family. And we've had opportunity to use it and it helped. And I just think to myself, I'm like, one day my daughter might be 1,000 miles away from me on the other side of the country. I'm not always going to be there. Even if she lived right next to me, I'm not always going to be there. I mean, the expectation is our children usually outlive us. And if that's the case, then I have to put as much knowledge as I can into this child so that when she lives by herself or has a husband or has kids or has her corgi rescue, she is empowered with the knowledge to try to survive a bad situation. So I don't know if that fully answers everybody's questions. I'm sure we could sit here for another hour or two talking about different things, but if anybody has any other questions, I mean, you're welcome to find us on the Matter of Facts Facebook group. You can drop them into the chat right here on YouTube or on Facebook underneath this live stream. We're not hard to get a hold of. You can go to mofpodcast.com and go through the contact sheet, send us an email. I mean, however you get a hold of us, we're more than happy to dig into these kinds of questions in greater detail or even in a more specific way. If someone has specific questions, I know
which has happened.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of patrons and we've had several listeners like ask me and Gillian questions I don't know that we would be super forthcoming about in public like this, but in private, we've certainly been very open with those people and been very as helpful as possible, trying to guide them down the path that we stumbled down. But I guess that'll be the end of prepping with kids for the moment, because if we sit here, we'll figure out more stuff to talk about. Best thing I can tell you is try to swim with the current, make it fun, and try to keep them interested. Keep them off their daggum cell phones. That helps a lot.
Yes. Don't give them a cell phone.
Don't give them one. Can I quote you on that?
No.
Matter of Fact's podcast heading out the door. Good night, everybody.
Good night.